The study found DNA similarities between friends, especially when it comes to the senses, like sharing a similar sense of smell. The report was co-authored by my guest, James Fowler, professor of medical genetics and political science at UC San Diego. And welcome to Evening Edition.
Thank you.
Now, James, your study asked the question whether genes played a role in friends being alike. What did you find?
We found actually that friends are more genetically similar than strangers. And this is over and above the tendency for us to make friends with people of the same ancestry. You know, for example, white people making friends with white people. And in fact, the level of similarity is so strong, it's as though friends who don't share any ancestors in common are actually genetically related. In fact, the level of genetic relatedness is about what you would expect between two people who are fourth cousins, people who share a great-great-great-grandparent in common.
How did you find this out? How did you conduct the study?
Well, we used a lot of genetic information and social network information from the Framingham heart study, which is a study that's been going on for more than 60 years. And we basically took about 30 years worth of social data, who was friends with whom, and we compared it to people's genes.
How much of an influence does a person's DNA, did you find, play in friends' likes and dislikes? We both like the same movies, or we both dislike a certain, I don't know, food.
Well, we tried to look for lots of different kinds of traits that might be in common among the genes that we have in common with our friends. And one of the things that we found is that we tend to smell the things the same way that our friends do. The genes for smelling are similar between friends.
And which genes were really least likely to be linked to our friends?
Well, we actually found that genes tend to have friends tend to have opposite genes when it comes to the immune system. And this is really interesting because it's sort of like what other researchers have found for spouses. Spouses also tend to have different immune system genes. And the reason why is you want your spouse to be able to defend you against all the things that you might be susceptible to. You don't want them getting a deadly disease that's also going to make you sick.
Interesting. How did your similar genes among friends compare to, let's say, you were saying fourth cousins, but let's say compared to brothers and sisters or first cousins? What is the description that you see there as far as in layman's terms?
Yeah, so brothers and sisters, they share about half of their genes in common. Cousins, it goes down to an eighth. And so every time you go out, you lose about a quarter of what's remaining. And so fourth cousins, it gets really, really small indeed. But this is really, really important for theories of evolution, because always before we just thought, you know, if we're strangers, then we share nothing in common. And actually, friends are sort of like the family that we choose.
Is there any idea on how you would have a similar DNA as a friend that you really have no familial association with?
Yeah, so say, for example, there are genes that influence our smell of coffee. And you really love the smell of coffee, and you walk like a zombie into the Starbucks,
right,
you know, looking for a cup. You're going to meet all the other people who have that same tendency there. And those are going to be the people that you're more likely to become friends with. So that's one possibility. But another possibility is that you actually like drinking coffee so much that you consciously say, oh, you know, that's one of the things I want to check off the list for what I think of as a good friend. I want to make friends with coffee drinkers. Either one of those things could be driving the similarity we found in this study.
How would you like to see this information used?
Well, I would really like to see larger studies so we have a better idea of what the underlying biology of choosing friends is like. You know, one of the fascinating things about studying social networks is that we have found that they're similar all around the world. Even in hunter-gatherers in Tanzania, they tend to have similar networks. And so we're just really fascinated with where did friendship come from? Why do we, as a species, exhibit this property of spending so much time with people that are not our mates and not our kin?
So this is something that you've been working on, and you're talking about this. Why do we have friends? Is there anything else you want to know about as far as DNA when it comes to relationships, perhaps spouses or, you know, great grandchildren or something like that?
Yeah, we do plan to study spouses next, and I think we're going to find some similar things. And I also think this is going to help us to understand evolution. Right now, our theories of evolution are all about, you know, what's good for you and how does that impact whether or not you survive. But if you think about someone who, for example, all of a sudden can speak language because they got a certain genes for that combination, it's not going to do them any good whatsoever if they just have it themselves. They need to have a friend who speaks language as well. And so I think there are a lot of things that help to explain how we are as a species that are about these social network effects. And it's going to be really important for us to understand who we are to be able to take those things into account.
All right, Professor James Fowler, thanks so much for this information.
Thank you.